What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I've got a special guest on the call, Michael Catron, and we're going to talk about this rogue creation that he's got going on here. He's usually got something spicy up his sleeve. Before we get into that, quick shout out to PotownStore.com. You can use code Celio for 5% off there, and also FlipsideGaming.com. Use code Celio, all caps, for 10% off there. What's up, Michael? How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not bad. So, preparation for Dallas is just beginning. How long have you been testing, theorying for it?
Pretty much since San Diego. I took a little bit of a break from like actually playing games, but I've been thinking about it the whole time.
Nice, nice. So what do you think the meta is going to look like? Like, we're still 2 weeks out from the actual tournament, but what do you think about it?
I think the best deck in the format is Turbo Dark. It can do pretty much everything and it's just so aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other good decks would be Zorogarb, Ultra Necrozma, Egg Row, and probably some sort of control deck.
Are there any decks do you think people are respecting that they shouldn't?
I think the Mewtwo deck's kind of bad.
Okay.
It has been doing well at the Cups. I can't really deny it, but in my
Yeah.
testing, it just seems not great. Um, it's definitely a deck I probably should look into more than I have.
Okay, cool. I feel that. So, what are the things you'd like, the weaknesses in the meta that you think are easily exploitable right now?
A couple decks have a really hard time with item lock plus chaotic swell.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to do a lot of seismitoad with that a lot, or maybe a Vileplume deck with swell. But
Okay.
and then a lot of decks also only have one or two answer to dealing with something like Pyroar or Vileplume. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
find a way to answer that with a Pyroar deck or a Vileplume deck, then that'll also be half the meta.
Yeah.
And then also just like special energy removals, Faba or E-Hammer, also very strong right now.
Cool. Cool. So I've got this list you sent me up on the screen. Pyroar, Seismitoad with, like you said, some energy removal, chaotic swells, Pyroar break. So what do you think about this deck so far? How are you early in testing? Have you put a lot into it? It's just a neat idea.
I've put a couple games into with it. I think it's super, super strong right now. It beats a lot of the meta. Eggrow is super favorable. Dark's pretty favorable. Zorogarb and Ultra Cosmo are pretty free. You just discard their energies. Um, it's got answers to pretty much everything and has Seismitoad, so it's good against a lot of random stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. So the big thing people are going to wonder is, what are you doing about Weavile GX? Since early on in Dallas testing and Dallas meta, and like looking at what the internet was hyping up, it looked like ADP Turbo Dark was a big thing, and they weren't playing Weaviles, but ADP Turbo Dark seems like it kind of sucks, and now everybody's back on Weavile. So what are you doing about that?
That's what the power breaks for. It allows you to, with a muscle band or a choice band, do enough damage to one shot it. And the only way they can get it back is with a Dark Union GX because they're not playing Stretcher. And if they are, you can just set a power break again with a Stretcher. But you just one shot the Weavile twice and you win the game. Or it can be a little hard to get there sometimes, but most of the time you can just get enough Pyroars because you have two Stretchers, a 4-3-1 Pyroar line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it takes them a while to take prizes because you're trying to keep GXs off the board. And if you do
Right.
have to play something like Shaman or Lele, you have Raytheon GX to GX and pick it back up that turn and just
Yeah, I think
maintain a good board state.
I think the Virizion GX is very intuitive for this deck, because your plan of just flooding the board with a couple Pyroars, and if one gets knocked out, you just go on to the next one. That could definitely, you could run into issues if you have like a Lele or a Shaman on the board as well.
Yeah.
So what I do like about this deck a lot is that it reminds me of older decks. Uh, Something like I believe Pram played like a 4/4 Pyroar with a one Charizard EX back at Nats like in 2014 or something. And there were also a lot of like Pyroar plus big basic decks back then. So I like that it reminds me of those kind of decks, and it reminds me of something that has been successful before, but that also worries me that it could be a little underwhelming. Do you have any thoughts on the lower damage outputs, and is that a problem?
The lower damage output like seems like a problem, but most of the time it's usually fine. Just because your goal is to lock specific decks in different ways. So something like Ultra Necrozma with the combination of Swell, Quaking Punch,
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible for them to attack until you're at 2 prizes. They just can't.
Okay, yeah.
And stuff like that. So you're just trying to make it really hard for your opponent to do anything. And if they can't do anything, your 30 damage, 50 damage Quaking Punches or Scorching Fang for 90 damage is just enough.
Yeah, and the Ultra Necrozma decks, I actually think they're moving towards not playing Garbotoxin at all, which means you could just win with Pyroar.
Yep.
What do you think about the Ultra Necrozma deck? Do you think it should be moving towards the Octillery Alolan Muck, or do you like the Garbotoxin?
I've haven't played it too much. I think the deck's pretty hard to play and inconsistent, so I just don't think it's a deck I'd want to play at an event.
Mm-hmm.
It's overall it's pretty strong. It's a super strong one prize attacker, but I tend to say I think Gardevoir is better. I think you need a backup attacker like Trash Lance in your deck because some matchups like if Zoroguard can limit their bench enough, 170 is just not going to get you there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely like Trash Lance as a backup attacker, but at the same time, it does take up a lot of deck space playing the 3/2/1 Garbodor and then playing some extra energy for the Garbodor as well. So what would the meta look like for you to play Pyroar Toad, and what would it have to look like to scare you away from something like Pyroar Toad?
For the meta to look like, lots of aggro. I think that matchup's super favorable.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dark's pretty good, so that, and then Ultra Necrozma. If there's a lot of Ultra Necrozma, I'd be so happy.
Okay. And then, so Turbo Dark, are you assuming that they are playing a 2/1 or a 2/2 Weavile? Is it fine if they play 2 Weavile?
I mean, if they're playing 2, they're just gonna beat you.
Okay.
But they usually only play 1, no stretcher, so
Okay.
you just kill it twice and win.
Got it. And another question I had was the Pyroar Mismagius deck that you actually didn't pilot, but it was something that I believe you and Isaiah Bradner created, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and someone piloted, Gibby piloted at Richmond, and almost made day 2 with it. So I can actually pull that up on the screen for everybody here. I wanted to ask you what you thought of Pyroar Mismagius still, and why you might think that Pyroar Toad is better.
I think Pyroar Mismagius was a fine deck, but Ranger hurts the Mismagius attack a lot more than it hurts Quaking Punch.
Right, yeah.
When someone Rangers a Quaking Punch, they're usually using an Ultra Ball or 2, and then or a Field Blower or something, and then just via Seekering.
Mm-hmm.
When they're using it against Mismagius, they're getting down their energies, which is the whole point of that deck. So it hurts a lot more that Rangers in the format now because of ADP. The deck also is just pretty very linear in its matchups. It pretty much has no way to beat decks that have basic energy in it if they're not only basic Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it also can't load up Pyroars as fast as it would usually like to. Like, you can play Blacksmith, but it just doesn't fit the deck as well as it would this deck. And so the deck's just kind of clunky sometimes, and I think the meta's kind of shifted away from where it was strong.
Okay, yeah, I think I can agree with that. I tried Pyroar Mismagius a couple weeks ago. Like I was telling you before, before we started recording, I put the Pyro Break in that deck as well, just as a help to knock out bigger threats. But yeah, I definitely feel that uh Mismagius gets hurt by Ranger, and also I felt like in this meta, Pyroar and Mismagius were both beating the same things.
Yeah.
Like Mismagius beats Ultra Necrozma, and then Pyroar also beats Ultra Necrozma. Mismagius beats Buzzgarb or Buzz like baby fighting attackers, and then so does Pyroar.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like the Toad. I think item lock is something that not a lot of people are testing against, and they're certainly not building their decks with it in mind. I don't know if you've seen Grant Manley's Ultra Necrozma list, or at least one of them. I forget which site it was on, probably PokeBeach, but he was playing like 4 bicycle and just like max counts of all the items, and I think that's kind of a trend right now.
Yeah, that's something we picked up on early in our testing. Is just Toad's super super strong right now. Last round, I actually thought it was just terrible and it shouldn't be in any deck. When I was playing like Pyroar and stuff, but now with the lots of the disruption gone, I think Toad got a lot stronger.
Yeah, and Toad also should probably shut out the doll decks, as long as they're not playing Ranger, or they can't get the Ranger in time.
Yeah, I guess it should in theory. They can definitely try and discard all your energies, and that's definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see it going either way. It seems like a pretty coin flip matchup based on how they draw.
Okay, yeah, I could feel that. All right, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to point out about the Toad Pyro deck?
Um, the it struggles with decks like Mewtwo that if they have a counter to Pyroar, but that's about it.
Okay, cool, cool. Have you got any shout outs before we wrap up?
Yeah, shout out to Nerd Rage Gaming. They sponsor me. And then also shout out to Joe and Bradner. They're busted.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel to talk about this deck. I think it's really cool, and even if people don't decide to play it, I think it could definitely influence some other rogue creations.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks again for being on the channel, and thank you everyone for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.